The Geet Ruler Episode Number 106 Explanation. Mu Chen and his group of 3 left the hidden spiritual courtyard and quickly sped through the path that they entered on. The people of the Academy Alliance were long gone. Thus, they were not obstructed along the way. In addition to the 3 of them being able to use spiritual energy, after roughly 10 minutes, they had already passed through the spike tree forest and smoothly exited the shadows. When they walked out of the shadows that were formed by the spike trees, they felt as if their bodies had instantly lightened. The sluggish spiritual energy within their bodies surged, and in an instant, powerful ripples of energy spread throughout their limbs. When their powers were restored, the 3 of them felt relieved. The feeling of having their spiritual energies suppressed was too uncomfortable. What a beautiful feeling! When Qingxian exhaled as her charming eyes gazed upon the clear sky and earth. After experiencing the feeling of not being able to use any spiritual energy, only then did she realize that the spiritual energy that flowed between this heaven and earth was so enchanting. Why are you being like this? In the spiritual road, it was an entire 2 years that we were not able to use any spiritual energy. Mu Chen smiled. Because it was too long in the spiritual road, I had already forgotten the sensation of using spiritual energy back then. When Qingxian smiled in reply, Mu Chen deeply nodded his head, and shortly after, his expression changed. He raised his head and looked beyond the distance of this forest, then realized that there were many other spiritual energy ripples in this region. Both of his eyes were narrowed as he gazed into the distance. There were figures of people appearing in his sight. There seemed to be several teams that were looking at their direction. In the depths of their eyes was a dense amount of greed and fire. What's going on? Luo Li had also noticed this scene, and in an instant, she furrowed her brows. She tightened her grip on her Luo God sword as she felt that something was amiss. When Qingxian lightly snorted as a golden war spear flickered with golden light in her hand. Her gaze brought along a chill as it swept through, and all those that exchanged contact with her could not help shifting their gazes away. Shoo! Not far away, there was a noise caused by the wind from extreme speed that resounded. Mu Chen and his group turned their gazes over and saw a few figures flying over, before landing by their side. It was Xu Huang and the rest that had been waiting outside of the forest. When Xu Huang and group saw that Mu Chen's group of 3 had smoothly come out, only then did they feel relieved. "You guys finally came out," said Xu Huang. "What's going on?" Mu Chen took a glance at the surrounding movements as he asked. Previously, when they entered here, there weren't so many people around here. Half a day ago, the group from the Academy Alliance came out. Xu Huang glanced at Mu Chen's group of 3 as a smear of astonishment could be seen in his eyes. "You guys were the ones that chased them out." Mu Chen nodded his head in acknowledgement. "What monsters?" Xu Huang and the rest were speechless. They had clearly seen the amount of people from the Academy Alliance. They had nearly 200 in number, and all of them had refined their physical bodies in the past. Even if they could not use any spiritual energy in the forest, they would still be hard to deal with. However, despite so, the 3 of them chased them out like stray dogs. After the group from the Academy Alliance came out, their facial expressions were ugly. "We hid ourselves for the time being." Thereafter, those fellows started to spread some news, Xu Huang said helplessly. They announced that there was a hidden spiritual courtyard which contained sovereign spiritual liquid that the Divine Wood Palace had been storing for countless years. There were at least tens of thousands of drops. The brows of Mu Chen furrowed. Those people of the Academy Alliance were indeed vicious. Seeing as they could not obtain the stuff from the hidden spiritual courtyard, they decided to spread the news so Mu Chen and his group could not have any peace. Tens of thousands of sovereign spiritual liquid, those fellows had quite a wild imagination. However, Mu Chen knew that once this news was released, it would still bring them quite a bit of trouble, even if it was false. The sovereign spiritual liquid was simply too precious. Everyone knew that if the amount had really reached tens of thousands, even sovereign realm experts would be fighting over it. Not many sovereign realm experts had accumulated such an amount of sovereign spiritual liquid. Tens of thousands of sovereign spiritual liquid could allow a sovereign realm expert to be suddenly wealthy. Furthermore, they further declared that the sovereign spiritual liquid stored in the hidden spiritual courtyard was taken by the 3 of you. Xu Huang bitterly smiled. Now, all these teams that are staring at you guys are coming for the three of you. Although they do not dare to do anything to the three of you, the amount that they have gathered is quite troublesome. HMPH, just some average fellows. If they have the capability, then come and snatch. If any of them could win against me, I will give them all the sovereign spiritual liquid in my possession. Just that they will probably die from that appetite of theirs. Wen Qingxian coldly snorted as her face was covered in frost. Xu Huang dryly laughed as they thought in their hearts, she is indeed worthy of being someone that has gotten first place once, such dominance. When Mu Chen was speaking with Xu Huang, there were nearly 10 figures that flew among the black patch of people, before stopping roughly a few hundred feet away. The 10 figures had powerful spiritual energy ripples around them. All of them were actually someone that had gone through spiritual energy disaster. Clearly, they were captains from a few decent teams. Behind them, there were nearly 10 teams that were staring at Mu Chen and his group. Captain Mu Chen, I am Chen Ya from the Spiritual Cliff Academy. The one leading was an azure-clothed youth with fair skin. His looks were rather handsome, but his eyes were filled with greed. Mu Chen glanced at him in indifference as he turned his head towards Xu Huang and the rest without paying any attention. Let's go. Wait. When Chen Ya saw how Mu Chen ignored him, his face changed as a smear of rage flashed across his eyes as he said in a solemn voice, Captain Mu Chen, we are all well aware of how powerful your group is. However, there are nearly 100 teams here waiting for you. If all of us were to fight, you guys might not take it well. What do you want then? Mu Chen finally took a glance at him as his tone was apathetic. Ha, we only want Captain Mu Chen to give every one of us 10 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid and we will not make things difficult for your group. Chen Ya quickly said when he heard Mu Chen's reply. 10 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid? Who are you? Wen Qingxian said with a chilled face. She took a step forward as her golden war spear dazzled with brilliant golden light that spread out. In an instant, a fearsome spiritual energy pressure began to expand, and under the pressure of that spiritual energy, the faces of Chen Ya and everyone else could not help changing as astonishment filled their eyes. Spirit disaster? Wen Qingxian has actually reached spirit disaster. No wonder she was once first in the points ranking. Feeling the boundless pressure from Wen Qingxian, all those staring teams could not help having their faces changed as fear flashed across their eyes. Do not be afraid. With so many of us here, even if she is a spirit disaster, we could still defeat her with all of us here. Chen Ya saw those people behind him starting to show signs of fear and he immediately declared. He knew that if they did not make use of their advantage of numbers, no one would dare to obstruct the path of Mu Chen, Wen Qingxian and Luo Li. Trash not knowing the meaning of death. Wen Qingxuan's eyes were filled with cold. Just when she was about to act, she saw Mu Chen smiling as he waved his hand. A streak of light flew out, which rapidly grew, turning into a huge greenish wooden statue. It was the Divine Wood Guard. Cripple him. Mu Chen pointed towards Chen Ya as he said in indifference. Boom! The Divine Wood Guard stomped as its huge figure charged forward, causing a shadow to immediately shroud Chen Ya. As the shadow shrouded over, Chen Ya's face changed. The spiritual energy in his body swept out as it turned into a powerful force that shot towards the Divine Wood Guard. The Divine Wood Guard threw its huge fist out and instantly shattered that force before heavily landing on Chen Ya's body. Boom! A deep clash resounded as Chen Ya's figure flew away like a cannon, before heavily shooting into the ground. The ground instantly crumbled as a deep crater appeared with Chen Ya lying in it. He was covered in fresh blood, no one knew if he was still dead or alive. You dare! The 9 other spiritual energy experts that came with Chen Ya yelled as their faces changed from the situation. Shoo! However, just when they had finished yelling, a golden light had already reached them. Wen Qingxuan's exquisite figure appeared before them as powerful spear images followed. Rustle. Swish. As the spear images swept past, 3 spiritual energy disaster experts were instantly defeated. Blood holes appeared on their bodies as they fell. Buzz. At the same time, a clear sword cry resounded. A sword river whistled out as it brought forth a strand of fresh blood. 3 other spiritual energy disaster experts held onto their hands as they retreated. Their faces were filled with fear as fresh blood flowed down from their arms. Boom! Boom! Mu Chen's figure had also appeared before the 3 remaining spiritual energy experts. Black lightning frantically flickered as he threw his fist out in indifference. The wind exploded under his fist as it struck the chests of those 3 at lightning speed. As an explosion resounded, the chests of those 3 caved in as they flew away, shrieking before being deeply impaled into the mountain. The entire region was filled with silence at this instant. 10 spiritual energy experts were instantly defeated by Mu Chen's group of 3 in just an instant. The lightning momentum was so fast that the other teams behind those 10 could not react in time. Mu Chen stood in the air as he dusted his hands without any expression. Thereafter, he glanced at those teams behind and declared with indifference, "Anyone else?" He knew the thoughts of the Academy Alliance and, therefore, he did not lay his hands as he knew that if he were to lay his hands in such a situation, it would only become troublesome and there would be more and more people who would gather. Therefore, he had chosen to exhibit his power, displaying intimidating might. Only then could he suppress the greed in the hearts of those fellows. Faced with such greedy people, he could only use violence. Faced with Mu Chen's indifferent tone, the momentum of the few hundred teams slugged. Some people held fear in their eyes and, at this moment, no one dared to speak. Up in the sky, Mu Chen, Luo Li, and Wen Qingxian stood with the huge divine wood guard behind them. The impact from their formation made others not dare to oppose them. At this instant, only then did everyone else realize how big of a gap they had with those 3. If you are eyeing on the sovereign spiritual liquid in my hand, then come at me. However, I have to issue a warning first. Although killing is a little problematic, I have the means to cripple you here. Mu Chen's cold voice resounded in the sky as it brought along chilling intent. Everyone was trembling in that coldness. Mu Chen coldly glanced at them before sweeping his gaze turned towards the surroundings as his cold voice resounded. As for the cowardly Academy Alliance, this method was too substandard. Next time, do it yourself. When he finished his speech, he waved his hand as he stored the divine wood guard. His figure moved as he flew towards the distance with Luo Li, Wen Qingxian, Xu Huang and the rest closely following after. No one dared to obstruct them and could only allow them to leave as they pleased. Looking at Mu Chen's leaving group, the other teams gathered here powerlessly sighed, before exchanging glances and dispersed. They had ultimately underestimated the 2 teams. Concealed in a region here, Mo Yu and his party was looking at Mu Chen's departing group. Mo Yu's face was pale as he firmly stomped his foot, before his cold voice resounded. Mu Chen, don't be too proud of yourself. I will get you to spit out the things that belong to me. In the azure blue sky, a wind slowly drifted amongst the loose clouds. The entire heavens and earth had an antique peace. Shoo! The sharp piercing sound of wind that resounded from afar suddenly broke the peace. Thereafter, 10 light figures streaked across. In a flash, they appeared in this horizon, along with powerful winds tearing apart the loose clouds. There doesn't seem to be anyone chasing after us. Xu Huang turned his head and glanced at the distance. When he saw that no one chased after them, only then did he feel relieved. Although the strength of Mu Chen and the other 2 was powerful, the other party had an advantage in numbers. Even if they had to kill, they would go limp from the exhaustion itself. Mu Chen nodded as he waved his hand and lowered his speed. Thereafter, he grasped his hand and a sparkling translucent jade bottle appeared in his hand. Within the jade bottle, there was sovereign spiritual liquid flickering with a luster. Vaguely, there were pure spiritual energy ripples emitted from it that could cause one's heart to race. This is... Xu Huang and the rest stared as their eyes instantly widened. Sovereign spiritual liquid? Speaking of this name, even their voices turned a little heated. After all, they clearly knew how precious the sovereign spiritual liquid was. Although it was something that only sovereign realm experts would perfectly enjoy, it still had a large amount of benefit for them at their current stage. Mu Chen smiled as he nodded his head. Thereafter, 40 sovereign spiritual liquid flew out from the bottle towards Xu Huang and the other 3 with a flick of his finger. 10 drops per person. After this trip in the Divine Wood Palace ends, you guys should be able to aim for spiritual energy disaster. For us? Xu Huang and the other four were a little at loss as they stared at the 10 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid floating before them. In that instant, they still had not recovered from the shock as they knew how precious the sovereign spiritual liquid was. 40 sovereign spiritual liquids was something that not even a one-stage sovereign realm expert could produce, even if that expert was to constantly refine for a year. We are a team. I would also benefit if your strength grew. Mu Chen smiled. Xu Huang and the other three exchanged looks as they could see the excitement within each other's eyes. Thereafter, they looked at Mu Chen with gratitude as they nodded their heads. Thanks. Seeing as Xu Huang and the other three had stored the sovereign liquid, Mu Chen redirected his gaze towards Pinna and her group of 3 that were anxiously waiting as he smiled. In this trip to the hidden spiritual courtyard, I have received the biggest harvest. Therefore, I will fork out your shares as well. He had obtained the spiritual condensing bowl in the hidden spiritual courtyard. Although it was only a counterfeit, the price of it could still not be estimated. Furthermore, there was still quite a lot of sovereign spiritual liquid in the spiritual condensing bowl. Although it was sealed and Mu Chen had no idea how much there was, it should not be a small amount. Generally speaking, Wen Qingxian and Luo Li also had a share in those sovereign spiritual liquids. However, due to the reason as it could not be unsealed, there was no way for Mu Chen to divide their shares at the moment and could only wait till the seal was undone. However, at that time, the 2 girls would probably not be by his side anymore. Mu Chen's finger flicked as another 40 sovereign spiritual liquids flew towards Pinna's group. The 4 girls were a little startled at how generous Mu Chen was. However, they did not immediately accept it as they directed their gazes over to Wen Qingxian, since she was the captain to their team. Take it, this is something that he should fork over. Fortunately, you're not that petty. Wen Qingxian took a glance at Mu Chen before nodding towards her teammates. When Pinna and the rest heard her words, only then did they feel excitement as they stored the sovereign spiritual liquid, before sweetly smiling to Mu Chen. Thank you, big brother Mu Chen. Mu Chen smiled as he looked at the remaining 40 sovereign spiritual liquid. He helplessly sighed in his heart. It wasn't easy for him to obtain those sovereign spiritual liquids, and in an instant, he had already lost at least half of them. Although he had the spiritual condensing bowl with him, it was sealed at the moment. He also did not dare to get someone to help him with such a precious item, as he was clear that something that could absorb spiritual energy and condense it into sovereign spiritual liquid was a miraculous treasure and the temptation it had to sovereign realm experts. Where are we going next? Wen Kingsguan asked towards Mu Chen. After the 2 trips with Mu Chen taking the lead and obtaining a huge harvest, she no longer had any opinion with Mu Chen taking the lead. Although these Divine Wood Palace ruins are vast, the amount of people that came here to look for treasures is large as well. I'm afraid that most of the places that contain treasures have already been searched. Mu Chen said with pity as he knew that aside from the spiritual treasure mountain and the hidden spiritual courtyard, there were still many places that contained treasures. However, they had spent quite an amount of time in the 2 places that they had gone to before. Although he felt pity, Mu Chen was rather optimistic. After all, not all the benefits had been taken. The taboo was being too greedy. Let's go to the Divine Wood Academy, the most important place in the Divine Wood Palace. Mu Chen said after some pondering, before raising his head towards the distance. I believe that all those teams with decent strength are already making their way over. I'm afraid that this struggle will be even more intense compared to the other 2. I want to see who has the capability to snatch treasures from me. When Qingxuan's phoenix-like eyes narrowed and within her eyes, there was a blazing fire. Let's go, then. Mu Chen smiled as he knew that Wen Qingxuan's character was as prideful as a phoenix. It was impossible for her to lower her head or to admit defeat to anyone. As he spoke, his figure had flown away like a streak of light. He was as fast as lightning as he streaked across the horizon like a meteor towards the distance. Just when Mu Chen was speeding towards the Divine Wood Academy, the most important area of the Divine Wood Palace, there was a commotion coming from another corner of the ruins. It was an ancient huge palace built on top of the mountain. The huge palace was built from huge wood as it seemed exceptionally firm. At this moment, there were powerful spiritual energy impacts coming from the great palace. Powerful spiritual energy ripples swept out, making the mountain seem as if it was trembling. In the sky around the ancient palace, there were several teams at the mountain peak as they glanced towards the palace from afar with fear in their expressions. The palace was the most perfectly maintained building within this region. Judging from the scale, it was clearly an important location in the ancient times of the Divine Wood Palace. Therefore, there should be treasures in this area. This was something that everyone knew. However, they discovered that when many teams had charged into it in impatience, they quickly came out in a miserable state as fear filled their eyes. No one could have expected this palace to be so dangerous. Furthermore, they even discovered a guardian with the strength comparable to spirit disaster within it. Facing such obstacles, no other team could successfully enter the palace. It wasn't until half a day later that a team of roughly a dozen that wore red robes appeared. That team gave off a chilling aura, making no one dare to carelessly approach them. Furthermore, when they reached here, they did not pay any attention to anyone else and charged straight into the palace. Till now, they had yet to return. However, everyone knew that they were not buried in it as they could feel the violent bloody spiritual energy ripples. There should be an intense fight inside the palace. This fact made everyone else startled as they were well aware of how dangerous the palace was. However, that red-robed team with unknown origin could actually last so long inside. Boom! There was an ear-piercing booming sound coming from inside. Thereafter, the gate of the palace was suddenly shattered as a huge figure shot out, crumbling this mountain. As huge stones fell, it buried half of the figure within. Everyone directed their gazes over and their faces drastically changed. That huge figure was actually that guardian that possessed the strength comparable to spirit disaster. And right now, that guardian was clearly defeated. Rustle. Rustle. In the time that they were startled, there were sounds of water flowing from the palace. A bloody river was suddenly seen charging out of the palace, before turning into a dozen blood-robed figures. At the head of the group, stood a youth with charming features as his forehead emitted a chill. He indifferently glanced at the shattered guardian before licking his scarlet lips and smiled. There is indeed some treasures in the Divine Wood Palace, our trip here is not in vain. As he finished his speech, his gaze suddenly moved as a bloody light flickered in his palm. He narrowed his eyes and a smear of an indifferent smile rose from the corner of his lips. That Mu Chen was indeed quite capable to actually plunder the hidden spiritual courtyard of the Divine Wood Palace. They should be currently heading for the Divine Wood Academy, right? Indeed interesting. If he could obediently hand over all his sovereign spiritual liquid to me, I suppose that I can spare his life. The youth furrowed his brows as he shook his head shortly. Forget it, since he dared to be so close to Luo Li, let's just kill him. Otherwise, when he meets that fellow, wouldn't all my merits be taken away? Let's go, towards the Divine Wood Academy. I also intend to meet that unfavorable fellow. The youth coldly smiled as he waved his hand. His figure turned into a streak of bloody light as he flew away. Behind him, those blood-robed figures closely followed behind him. As they left, the surrounding teams looked towards the great palace, contemplating if they should go in and take a look. Suddenly, cracks appeared on the palace and under their astonished gazes, it crumbled. The Divine Wood Academy sat at the highest point of the Divine Wood Mountain. Looking from outside the Divine Wood Mountain, one could vaguely see that there was an imposing building on top of the colossal mountain. It stood quietly and towering, as if it was overlooking this land. In the ancient times, this region had the most governing power to the other big and small forces in this region. Mu Chen and his party did not make any stops along their way, and despite so, when they gradually approached the Divine Wood Academy, it had already taken half a day of their time. Fortunately, there wasn't any sunset or sunrise in the Divine Wood Palace. Dazzling light covered this region at any time and anywhere. Thus, this was why the trees were lush to such a fearsome degree. Shoo! Mu Chen and his party landed on a mountain peak as they directed their gazes over. There was a smear of astonishment surfacing in their eyes. At a good distance away, there was a mountain towering into the sky. The mountain peak formed blades as it was extremely precipitous. It was impossible to climb over it, and on the peak of the mountain, there was a deep green ancient palace quietly sitting on it. There was a green light circle that was roughly a few thousand feet that made it seem like a ring of a planet around the palace's surroundings. The divine appearance of it was astonishing. Truly deserving to the call the Divine Wood Palace. Mu Chen sighed. Even after the flow of time for the hundreds or thousands of years, they could still feel the powerful might of the Divine Wood Palace from the ancient times that could still be emitted from some fine areas that made others feel respect when looking at it. Mu Chen gradually withdrew his gaze as he swept towards the surroundings. Thereafter, he could see countless streaks of light flying over at this direction from the distance and landed on the peaks that were tens of thousands of meters high. Clearly, as time passed, more and more teams gathered onto this region. Mu Chen was not surprised by it, as anyone could feel that this palace was the most important location of the Divine Wood Palace. Boom! On the tens of thousands of meters peaks, it was as if a bell from the ancient times had suddenly resounded. Within the sound, it gave off a worldly transformation sensation. This is the Divine Wood Academy. Xu Huang and the rest gazed upon the ancient great palace on the peak with blazing gazes as they turned to Mu Chen. Shall we act? There's no need to rush. Mu Chen, however, slowly shook his head as his gaze was firmly on the light ring around the great palace, as he felt a daunting ripple coming from it as he lightly said, "This Divine Wood Academy is not easy to approach. The light ring is not useless as well. Just with us alone, it's impossible for us to barge into it." Correct, the headquarters of various forces have their own powerful defenses. Although the Divine Wood Palace has already crumbled with the flow of time, it is still not something that we could recklessly barge in. Luo Li said with her head nodding. Wen Qingxuan's charming gaze had also landed on the huge light ring as her expression turned grave. Seeing that response, Xu Huang and the rest immediately broke the anxiousness in their hearts, since they were well aware of Mu Chen and the other two's strength. Since even they felt danger, then it was naturally not something that they can deal with. Mu Chen, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian exchanged a glance as they became silent as they waited. Time rapidly flowed by as the three of them waited. As time passed, there were countless sonic booms resounding as an earth-shattering amount of light streaked over. Thereafter, they were like locusts as they landed on trees of the various mountain peaks. The gazes of all those teams that came here were all directed onto the ancient palace on top of the towering peak. Their gazes were blazing with greed as they knew that this area was the most important location of the Divine Wood Palace. Shoo! Another break of wind resounded as another group of people arrived and hovered in the air. Mu Chen directed his gaze over and, thereafter, he rubbed his nose. The group that just came was from the Martial Spiritual Academy, and the one leading had a fine figure and wearing a fiery red dress. What caught the attention of others was her crescent blade that was even bigger than herself. She was also returning his gaze with a chill. It was Wu Yingying. "You meet again." Wen Qingxian chuckled as she looked at Mu Chen. Mu Chen helplessly smiled. Previously, on the Spiritual Treasure Mountain, Wu Yingying did not ally herself with Wang Zhong to deal with him, which made him a little surprised, and caused him to have a good opinion about Wu Yingying. Although this young girl was a fiery spice, her character wasn't unruly. Therefore, when Mu Chen saw that Wu Yingying had come, he gave her a gentle smile. HMPH. However, in contrast to his goodwill, Wu Yingying's face was chill as she coldly snorted and turned her head around, no longer bothered about him. Having his warm face on a cold butt, Mu Chen felt a little awkward and could only shrug his shoulders. After Wu Yingying's group, there were also several other powerful teams that had appeared. Among them that made Mu Chen startled was that in this Divine Wood Palace, some teams seemed to have obtained a good opportunity which made their team, as a whole, to rise in strength. As more and more teams rushed over, several familiar teams began to show themselves, which include Wang Zhong from the Saint Spiritual Academy and the party from the 4C Spiritual Academy. HM? Mu Chen softly exclaimed when he saw Wang Zhong as his brows furrowed. That fellow's strength has grown. When Qingxian had also sensed it as she spoke in astonishment, it seems that he has already refined the spiritual treasure from the Spiritual Treasure Mountain, borrowing it to step into spirit disaster. Indeed, worthy of being the most eldest amongst the 4 holy sons of the Saint Spiritual Academy. Mu Chen said softly. This Wang Zhong was indeed capable, as he was so decisive in refining the spiritual treasure at this time and step into spirit disaster. Mu Chen could naturally sense that the spiritual energy around Wang Zhong had grown stronger compared to the time at the spiritual treasure mountain. The faint pressure being emitted from him had already shown that he had stepped into first-grade spirit disaster. When Mu Chen had his attention on Wang Zhong, the latter had also directed his cold gaze over. However, Mu Chen smiled at his cold gaze. First-grade spirit disaster was indeed powerful, but it still wasn't something that could make him feel pressured. This Wang Zhong must have suffered a great blow when Mu Chen defeated the first-grade spirit disaster puppet back at the spiritual treasure mountain. Otherwise, he wouldn't make any breakthroughs at this time. Wang Zhong must be clear that if his strength remained as it was, he would have lost the qualification to fight with Mu Chen in the end. Shoo! Another break of wind resounded and Mu Chen directed his gaze over. He saw a large amount of unevenly matched people approaching. However, with their numbers, it was still rather intimidating. Aside from the Academy Alliance that could gather so many people, who else could it be? Those fellows. However, when he met Mo Yu, Qin Feng, and Liu Xiong once again, he was startled as he discovered that the three of them had lost an arm. What's going on? Mu Chen, Luo Li, and Wen Qingxian exchanged gazes and felt dumbfounded. Just who did those three fellows encounter? Why did they become one-armed? Mo Yu and the other two landed on a mountain peak as their gazes savagely fixed onto Mu Chen and his party. Killing intent could not be covered in their eyes and, furthermore, there seemed to be violence and mockery within their killing intent. Seems like after their trip to the hidden spiritual courtyard, those fellows were up to something again. Mu Chen's heart jolted. After their last encounter in the hidden spiritual courtyard, Mo Yu was well aware that he could not contend against Mu Chen's group. But from their current appearance, it seemed as if they no longer feared him. There are many bizarre things in the Divine Wood Palace ruins. Who knows if they might have gotten an opportunity instead? Let's be careful about them, said Wen Qingxian. Mu Chen nodded his head. Wen Qingxian wasn't wrong. Opportunity wasn't something that only they could encounter. Although Mo Yu and his group was rather unlucky, who knows, their sorrow might turn into joy instead. Rustle. As this region became more and more noisy, there was suddenly the sound of a river and, thereafter, a dense smell of blood came from nowhere and spread throughout this region. At the scent of that bloody stench, Luo Li's exquisite face was covered in chill. Those fellows have finally appeared. Mu Chen's black pupils were also cold as he looked at the horizon. There was suddenly a river of blood approaching along with a heavy stench of blood. The river of blood landed under the countless gazes onto a mountain peak. When the bloody light dispersed, a dozen figures that wore blood-red robes appeared, along with chill aura, and the stench of blood spread out. Ha ha, it seems that we're not late. At the front of the dozen blood-robed figures, Shui Qiando lightly smiled. However, his smile was filled with murderous flavor. He turned his head over and fixed his gaze onto Mu Chen's party as the smile on the corner of his lips became even more dense. Mu Chen, Luo Li, we meet again. Mu Chen narrowed his eyes as he stared at Shui Qiando. Among his enemies here, only this fellow that came from the Blood God clan might make him feel fear. However, he also understood that it was unavoidable for him to have a battle with Shui Qiando here. Mu Chen inhaled a mouthful of air as his eyes surveyed the area before his black pupils instantly turned cold. Among the 6 batches of people, the Academy Alliance, Saint Spiritual Alliance and Shui Qiando's group would undoubtedly target them without any hesitation. He did not have any grudges with the 4C Spiritual Academy nor were they friends. As for Wu Yingying, Mu Chen could not see through the heart of that girl and had no idea what she would do under anger. It seems that it would not be an easy matter for them to become the greatest winner again. However, no matter what, those fellows still didn't have the qualification to make Mu Chen feel fear. The youth's pupils were as sharp as a blade that made others not daring to look into his eyes. Beneath the mountain peak that was tens of thousands of feet, the breaking of wind resounded as one streak of light after another was constantly approaching this direction, filling this land with noise and causing it to become even more chaotic and noisy. Mu Chen and his group stood at a position that was the closest to that huge peak. In this inner circle, all those that possessed the qualification to stop in this region were all teams that possessed powerful strength. After all, There were too many people here, and without sufficient strength to hold a good position, they would instantly be thrown away. In this region, the position they stood was held with strength. Mu Chen's gaze was cold as he stared at Shui Qiando. Compared to Wang Zhong, Mo Yu, and the rest, this fellow was naturally the one that concealed himself the best. He originated from one of the 4 god clans of the West Heaven realm. It was a clan that possessed unimaginable depth. Clearly, Shui Qiando's position in the Blood God clan was not someone like Shui Shi from before could compare to. This fellow came for Luo Li and, naturally, Mu Chen would definitely not let him lay his hands on her. Faced with Mu Chen's sharp gaze, Shui Qiando smiled. His smile contained coldness that should make one shiver. Luo Li, who was standing beside Mu Chen, was tightly gripping her Luo God sword. Her crystal-clear pupils had a chill moving within them. Her heart was filled with uncontrollable killing intent for someone of the Blood God clan. If it wasn't for their current situation being unsuitable, she might have not held her hands and killed this person from the royal family of the Blood God clan. Boom! Just when they had a chill flowing in their eyes as they glanced at each other, another ancient bell rang from the mountain peak. The bell swayed in the heavens and earth as it brought along an aura from the ancients. Buzz! Buzz! When the bell rang, the light ring around the green Great Palace seemed to have weakened. Everyone could see the energy on the light ring being weakened by a great amount in that instant. Let's go! Among the ocean of people, someone barked as his voice resounded like thunder. Boom! The atmosphere in this region instantly exploded as countless teams were seen flying up with boundless spiritual energy surrounding them. Their figures had turned into streaks of light as they flew towards the colossal peak. Mu Chen's figure had also flown out at this instant, and at his rear, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian followed with Xu Huang and the rest after them. Everyone was clear that this was the best time to ascend the mountain. Therefore, no one hesitated. The earth-shattering amount of light rays streaked across the horizon. After a dozen breaths of time, they had managed to reach the waist of the mountain with a leading light figure not far away from the peak. Rumble! Just when the first person charged towards the summit, the colossal light ring around the palace exploded with a deep sound. Thereafter, countless light beams that were like stormy raindrops rained down from the light ring. Bang! 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 The light beam quickly hit against a human figure. Although that light beam wasn't sharp, those that were hit by it instantly bounced back, no matter what powerful defense he possessed or defensive spiritual artifact he had. Fresh blood spurted out as that figure was like a bird whose wings were suddenly broken as he fell from the massive height. Mu Chen's figure charged as he passed through countless light figures. He seemed to have felt how powerful those light beams were, but he still maintained a calm composure as he had expected such an event. Shoo! A light beam fell from the sky as it shrouded Mu Chen's figure. That speed had reached a limit that even Luo Li and the rest who were close to him could not provide him any aid in time. Boom! Black lightning that was like a lightning dragon burst forth from Mu Chen's body. Lightning flickered on his skin as he seemed like a lightning god, mighty and powerful. Boom! That light beam clashed against Mu Chen's body, causing his body to jolt. However, his feet tapped the ground as he pushed through the light beam towards the summit. Just when Mu Chen was shrouded by the light beam, Wen Qingxian and Luo Li were also targeted by other light beams. HMPH. Wen Qingxian coldly snorted as dazzling golden light was emitted as her golden war spear appeared in her hand in a gripping motion. Spear light swept out as she seemed like a war goddess, forcefully clashing with the light beam. Buzz! Luo Li, however, had maintained a calm expression as the Luo god sword in her hands burst forth with sharp sword light as it slashed down. Shoo! The two figures charged through the light beams at the same time as they chased after Mu Chen. Rumble! At the same time, a few other figures had charged through as well from other locations. Powerful and boundless spiritual energy swept out from their bodies as they had managed to forcefully withstand the descending light beams and charged towards the summit. Bang! Deep and muffled noises constantly resounded in the sky as countless figures were bounced back as they spat out blood. However, there were also several powerful people that had managed to break through the light beams. Some people with great eyesight had also noticed the fact that with more people charging towards the mountain, the power behind the light beams would also be weakened. This made others well astonished. If it was to a solo charge, wouldn't that mean that even Sovereign Realm experts would be injured by it? Rustle. A dragon image appeared beneath Mu Chen's feet as his figure flashed. He had arrived at the summit of the mountain as his figure landed on a platform that was made from green wood. Behind him, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian followed. After a while longer, Xu Huang and the rest followed after, but their states were a little terrible compared to the prior three. Luckily, they did not follow them too quickly, otherwise, they might not have been able to sustain the attack from the light beam. But even so, they were nearly shot down to the bottom. Shu. After Mu Chen had ascended the summit, one figure after another had also appeared on the platform. It was a black patch of people, but compared to the amount at the bottom of the mountain, God knows how many were stopped by the first level of defense. At least 80% was blocked out. Mu Chen swept his glance around and saw that Shui Qiando, Wang Zhong, Mo Yu and Wu Yingying had also successfully ascended the summit. As everyone reached the summit, the surrounding light ring burst forth with dazzling luster once again. Along with it, there was a heart-alarming thunderous roar. Deep green light swept out from the light ring as it spread to this platform, isolating the people here from the Divine Wood Academy. Rumble. Rumble. The green light seemed as if it was a green sea of clouds as it surged. Thereafter, deep green lightning appeared amongst the clouds as it flashed through, bringing along astonishing roars of thunder. That's... Everyone looked at the sight of the lightning sea as their faces changed. It's the Divine Wood Lightning Dipper. Luo Li's face was a little grave as she spoke. Within the heaven and earth, there were many bizarre energies born from the world. Their might was unimaginable, similar to the divine black lightning that Mu Chen had previously used to refine his lightning god's physique. As for this Divine Wood Lightning Dipper, it was said that this lightning could only be born in a place filled with the aura of wood, after compressing the aura of wood to the limit and, thereafter, giving the birth of lightning. This energy was extremely bizarre and hard to deal with as it was like maggots. The instant it entered a body, it would cause spiritual energy to explode. Therefore, when everyone saw what was before them, their faces turned ugly. This Divine Wood Academy is, indeed, a place that's not easy to enter. Mu Chen had also softly sighed. Behind him, the faces of Xu Huang and the rest turned ugly and, shortly after, they bitterly smiled. They had exerted great effort just to pass through the first obstacle, and if they were to charge through this sea of lightning, how could they be able to keep their lives? Seems like they could only hold their steps here. Those who wish to enter the Divine Academy has to be purified by the sea of lightning in the time it takes to burn a joss stick. When the green sea of lightning appeared, an ancient and empty voice indifferently resounded between this heaven and earth, as if it came from the ancient times. Many faces changed when they heard that voice. It wanted them to enter this sea of lightning? Furthermore, they had to hold on for the time it takes to burn a joss stick. Doesn't that simply mean to take their life? Mu Chen's expression was exceptionally grave. However, just when he was about to speak, the empty voice resounded once again. Those who obtained the position of successor has to entire tenfold the amount of time. Mu Chen's eyes abruptly shrank. 10 times? This goddamn Divine Wood Palace, what dog's hit successor position was this? Was that meant to play someone to death? Successor. Many people were confused. Clearly, they had not heard of the term successor prior to this. However, they felt relieved as that meant that they will not be the ones to suffer. This sea of lightning before them was extremely fearsome. A joss stick of time was still something that they could still strive for, but if the time were to extend by 10 times, even spirit disaster experts would have to retreat. Shoo! Just when everyone was discussing, a streak of light shot out of the sea of the lightning that shrouded Mu Chen, whose face had turned ugly. The surrounding gazes were astonished as they gazed at Mu Chen. As for Wang Zhong, Mo Yu and the rest, they were briefly stunned, before having joy surfacing in their eyes from Mu Chen's misfortune. Mu Chen disregarded those gazes as he maintained an indifferent expression. Just when he was about to step forth, his expression suddenly changed as he saw another streak of light shoot out from the sea of lightning and shone onto another direction. At that direction, Shuiqiando was also shrouded in the light with a calm expression. Mu Chen's pupils shrank for a brief moment. This Shuiqiando had also obtained the identity of a successor? So it turns out that he wasn't the only one. This episode ends here. Thank you for watching.